Behind me is the all-new Toyota Land Cruiser, and today we're going to put it to the test against the legendary Toyota 4Runner on the slip test. The Toyota Land Cruiser has long been known to have one of the best full-time four-wheel drive systems known to man. And today, we have the privilege of testing the all-new redesign, where they've redesigned the Land Cruiser from the ground up. It still has the Torsen center diff, so it might perform the same. But with that said, we're going to put it on the roller test today, and we're going to test it against the legendary 4Runner, which is what I consider to be the benchmark in this test after testing it last week against the GX550. So let's jump on the roller test and see how this thing does. All right, so here we have the Land Cruiser. For those of you who don't know, it has a Torsen center differential. So what that means is that it distributes power. It has the ability to distribute power between the front and the rear axles. And it does that via a torque sensing mechanical system. So what it does is it drives power to the wheels that are sensing torque. So a lot of times what happens is when you put these on these roller tests, they experience some challenge because all of the torque is being sent to the wheels and the rollers. Now, this is not often replicated in real world driving unless you're on complete ice, in which case you'd probably want to lock your center diff. But for the sake of this test, it's a very hard test for this system. So we have two wheels in the rollers, and the center diff is in the Torsen diff is in the center. So what it's probably going to do is send power to the front and the rear because it's sensing torque here and here, and spin both of these wheels freely, and it's probably not going to spin the wheels that are stuck. That's where we have our tools to get us unstuck. So we have MTS and we have crawl control, so we can change the different systems to try to get out. So let's see how it does, and let's get into it. All right, so right now, just driving as normal. We're getting the wheel spin here. And it's not pulling us off the rollers. We're just getting spin. The diff is sending the torque to the wheels that are spinning. So let's try MTS here. We'll go to MTS. Let's try MTS in dirt mode first. We'll put this on here. MTS in dirt mode first. I like to get it into neutral so it settles. And it's just spinning. Okay. Let's do MTS in sand. Let's try sand. The options we have are dirt, sand, mud, and deep snow. So let's try sand here. Again, our problem here is really mechanical, so none of these modes that don't lock the center diff are really going to do much. So with that said, let's move on. Let's move on from that. I've tried all the different modes. None of those work. So what we're going to do is we're going to try locking the center diff, which in locking the center diff, wait for it to lock here. All right, our center diff is locked. Now let's see if that makes any difference. As I would expect, again, it's just locking the center, so it's sending power equally to the front and rear. And then you still have open differentials across the front and rear axle. So with that said, that's also not going to lock it. If we try pumping the brakes, that also doesn't seem to do much of anything. Settle it into neutral, try it again. Nothing. Okay. And that makes sense because it's a Torsen center diff. And again, as I mentioned, this is a really tough test for this system. This is not replicated in real life very often. So this is when you might need something like crawl control. So to press crawl control, we activate it right here. All right. Now we have crawl control enabled. Now in this situation, we could have just engaged the rear locker. The rear locker would kind of do the same thing where it would lock up the rear, which would push you off, but crawl control is going to do the same thing by using the braking system to brake one wheel and drive power to the other wheel. So it should pull us right off. So crawl control is turned on. Let's see how it does. It's crawl control set to auto, and let's give it a try. Very smooth, and that's something that I have noticed about the new crawl control system is that it's very quiet and very smooth. So what you need to do in this situation is you got to put it into, you got to use the crawl control system or the rear locker so you're able to lock up either the front or the rear axle in some way to get you off the roller test, and that's just because of the way the Torsen center diff works. Okay, now we have another test to try. We're going to throw it up on the rear rollers. Now, we're going to have a similar result here because, again, it's a Torsen center diff. I'm assuming it's going to shift all power to the rear and not shift any power to the front. Now, I know it's a full-time four-wheel drive system. People talked about this in the comments ad nauseum last time for the GX550. The reality is that this does make sense for this test, that it wouldn't pull itself off the rollers. I do think the previous gen GX460 did in a video. I'm waiting to get one to test it, but the system is meant to drive power to where it's getting torque. So that doesn't, you don't often have a situation in a real world scenario where you're getting no torque at, multiple different wheels similar to this roller test. And you're getting tons of torque to two wheels and then no torque to other wheels. It's kind of a weird test because you're always kind of moving when you're driving. So the system in the real world scenarios does a little bit better, but this is still an interesting way to view how it works. All right, so let's do it. All right, and I go in neutral, make sure we're locked in. All right, I think we're set. All right, so we're on the rear rollers. Nothing is turned on, just regular driving is set. So let's see here. I don't know if we're actually in the rollers there. All right. Huh. This actually seems like it might pull me off. No, I guess not. It's still driving all power to the rear. Yep. I'm trying to do a little bit of braking to see if I can use some braking to pull me off, see if it'll drive any power to the front. Let me try using braking while I'm actually going here. You shouldn't have to do that though. All right, so it's doing exactly as we expected. It's sending all power to the rear. Let's try MTS. Again, MTS is not meant to change. It's meant to change probably the ratio or the rate at which it allows slip to happen, but it's not going to likely actually shift power front and rear. So let's do drive mode select. We'll try, not drive mode, MTS select, and let's try dirt first, and we'll go from there. As expected, no difference. I'm not going to go through all the different modes. MTS just doesn't do it. It's a mechanical problem. So the easiest thing you can do here, locking the rear diff's not going to do anything. But what you want to do is you just lock the center diff and it'll pull you right off. Crawl control will do the same things. It would use braking to pull you off, but watch this. We'll lock the center diff. As soon as the center diff is locked, it should pull us right off. Yep, and you can feel it. It happens pretty instantaneously. Once that center diff is locked, it does a really good job of easily pulling you off the rollers. Now we're going to test the 4Runner on this test after we do 3 wheels here, but you'll see the 4Runner performs the same way as having a center diff locked once you take the manual transfer case and shift it into 4 high. All right, well, let's try one more test. We'll put all 3 wheels on and just illustrate the crawl control real quick, and then we'll move on to the 4Runner. Let it settle into the rollers. Again, center diff is locked. We have 3 wheels up. It should probably roll freely. Yep. It looks like it's actually putting some power to that front wheel though. It looks like it might want to pull me off. Interesting. That's interesting. All right, let it settle. It's trying. I think if I revved it hard enough, it might. It looks like it put power to that front left wheel. That's very interesting. I think it might be tuned a little bit different than the GX. That was just with the center diff locked. Pretty interesting. Now we're gonna do one more test. We're gonna do one wheel in the rear, one wheel in the front. We'll see how that goes. So now we're gonna do one more final test with the 2 wheel, one wheel in the front, one wheel in the rear. Center diff is locked. We'll see if it can drive power to that front wheel or the rear wheel. That's what it's going to need to do. Looks like it might actually be sending some power. Let's see. Yeah, the Land Cruiser seems to be pulling itself right off in this test. I'll review to see if that front wheel caught traction any other way on the roller that I have, but it looks like the center diff, when it was locked, sent power to the front and rear, and got enough traction to either one of the wheels touching the ground. Pretty impressive. All right, now for good measure, we're gonna test what I consider to be the benchmark still in this test, the Toyota 4Runner, because of its ease of getting off the rollers. It's so simple, the way that you engage the manual transfer case to get off the rollers. I just personally find this to be the most enjoyable to use on this test. So let's give it a try. All right, so here you have the Toyota 4Runner on a two-wheel roller test. So this is a rear-wheel drive 4Runner. Not all 4Runners are like this. I know people like to point out specifics in the comments. This is a TRD off-road. Not all 4Runners are strictly rear-wheel drive, and then they have a manual transfer case to engage all four wheels, 3 or 4 high or 4 low, and then you have MTS on top of that and crawl control. So anyway, this is a rear-wheel drive off-road premium 4Runner, so it's going to have all the power transfer to the rear wheels, and the traction control is probably going to try to, send power around, but it's probably not going to be enough to get me off the rollers. So let's see what that does now. Yep, my pedal's pulling me. The traction control is actually doing pretty good. I mean, if I kept going, it might pull me off. Yep, the traction control pulled me off the rollers. Pretty impressive. That was strictly in rear-wheel drive. I didn't even have to engage anything. So with traction control, it modulated the brake automatically because in the rear-wheel slip test and was able to pull me, or not the rear-wheel slip test, the two-wheel on one side slip test, whatever you want to call that. It sent power to the other rear wheel. So pretty cool. Let's try a different test now. We're going to put both wheels, both rear wheels in the rollers, and we'll try that. All right, we have the rear wheels locked in. No systems engaged. It'll try to use traction control a little bit. It thinks it's just rolling, so it's not even using traction control. So what you're gonna have to do is you gotta engage 4 high. So you're gonna go down here, grab my lever. I'm gonna drop it into 4 high, engage. This is what I love about these old school manual transfer cases. There's no guessing, no button pushing. It's just very nice. Now I know it's engaged. Take my foot off the gas, and it pulls right off nice and smooth. Gotta love that. All right, now we're gonna do the 3-wheel slip test for the 4Runner. Let's see how it does. All right, drop it in neutral. Make sure we're all settled in. Okay. I still have my 4Runner, my transfer case set to 4 high, so should be equal distribution of power front and rear. In theory, it's an open diff. It should send power to all the rollers and not be able to pull itself off, but we'll see. Yep, so it's stuck. I'm getting traction control. Traction control is trying to do something. So without having to use MTS or A-Track, traction control actually pulled me off that pretty well. Now we'll have to review the footage to see exactly how it got me off on that side. It's possible the rollers move. It's not, this isn't a perfect, absolutely perfect test, guys, but, this is why I like the 4Runner. Not a lot of buttons to push, not a lot of complexities to figure out. I'm typically able to do this much quicker and easier than I am with the new electronic systems. Now, maybe I'm not the most savvy with the electronic systems. Maybe it takes some time to, get to learn the new electronic systems, but that doesn't change the fact that good old simplicity is still a really good method. So let's try one more test. We're gonna put the front and the rear wheel on for the 4Runner, and we're just gonna see how it does. All right, so we have one final test for the 4Runner, which I think is still kind of the GOAT. The Land Cruiser did pretty good, but the 4Runner is still the GOAT, man. This thing's hard to get stuck. So we got the rear wheel up in rollers, front wheel is gonna go up in rollers, one on each side. Again, I think it's gonna be able to push itself off because last time, not even in 4 high, it sends power to the rear, and then the traction control gave it power on the back right wheel. So let's do that again and see how it goes. All right, put it in the neutral. Let it chill for a sec. Put it in the drive. All right, so we're getting spin in that back left wheel. And let's see if traction control without touching any of the systems will give us enough power to get us off the front roller. Wow. Didn't even have to put it in 4 high, and the traction control system drove power to the other wheel, pulled us off. Kind of the same as we already saw, but pretty impressive. As you can see, the old reliable 5th gen 4Runner is still crushing it out here. But today we tested the new Land Cruiser as well against this 4Runner, and that new Land Cruiser also did a really good job. It did quite a bit better, I think, than the GX550 did, even though they have the same system. For some reason, it just seemed to maybe be calibrated differently and send power around a little bit easier than that GX550 that we tested. And you saw in the video that, you know, with the center diff locked, it pulled itself off of most scenarios here pretty effortlessly. And I can say the same for the 5th gen 4Runner. Now, the thing that I will point out as a difference between the two and my driving experience is that I found the Toyota 4Runner to be quite a bit more intuitive and easy to use. That's just me getting used to maybe the electronic functions and buttons of the new vehicles, but I just find the manual transfer case very easy to use. And the 4Runner actually did a really good job pulling itself off of a lot of different scenarios. I think, you know, 2 of the 3 scenarios that we tested in just the rear-wheel drive mode using traction control. So pretty impressive that it was able to do that. But with that said, the new Land Cruiser still did a really good job. If you guys like this video, I want to get a bunch of more cars on the roller test. Let's just keep it up. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And until next time, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.